Good morning. It's good to see everyone here today. It's always good to open God's Word and to study it, but today I have to bring you some bad news. Didn't want to, but I felt I owed it to you. It's not really news, you probably already know it, but last Saturday, not yesterday, but a week ago, the 23rd, was the last day of summer. It's over. It seems like it barely got started this year. So much rain, kind of late getting warm, and now it's over. And in my mind, when I think of the end of summer, I think of school starting. Colorado, we've been in school 2 months already. There's something wrong with the education system here in Colorado. It used to be summer ended after Labor Day, but that's for another time. But when summer ended and you went back to school, it seems like it always followed with the obligatory assignment, what I did this summer. Isn't that fun to put in your first essay, what I've done this summer? I thought I could talk about something I've done this summer. I took a trip and I drove around Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, a little bit of Missouri, and I took pictures of old train stations. I rode on a passenger train in Iowa, an old steam train in Kansas. Thought I should show slides of my trip. But to avoid the narcolepsy that would follow, I thought I'd talk about something that did happen on my trip that to me was a little bit profound. Something that kind of was eye-opening to me. When I travel, I'm the cheapskate. I take a cooler and I put all my lunch stuff in there, my drinks, my snacks, and I rarely eat out. I eat out of the car. It's quicker and cheaper, and I like it. Fits with my schedule. But one time on the whole trip, just one time, I went to one restaurant, and I saw something interesting. I went in and I sat down, and as I sat down at the booth I was at, I looked across, and there was another booth, and I could see an older couple there. The woman was facing me, the man was facing away. I could tell something was on this woman's mind. She was upset. The husband had $3 in his hand for a tip, and the woman said, "You take that dollar away, and you take that dollar away. She's lucky to even get that." And I'm like, something went wrong with the order or something. And she's going on and on about what service was or what the food was. I couldn't quite hear, but I could hear she was upset. And the old man, he held on to $1. He wasn't going to go down to zero. And I know in Genesis chapter 3, it says, God said to the woman, "Your desire will be for your husband, but he shall rule over you." And I was thinking, this guy is not ruling over anything. Nothing at all. He put the $1 down, and they quit talking when this waitress came back. And she said, I have a corrected receipt for you now. I apologize for everything. Is there anything else I can get you? Anything I do to take care of you today? I'm like, oh no, everything's fine. And so she walked away. The couple gets up and they leave. She comes back a little while later and starts to clean the table. She looks down. There's $1. She sets it down, and I can't see her. Her back's to me. She starts rearranging the table. She grabs that dollar again, looks at it, sets it down, gathers everything and goes on as if to say, yeah, it really was just $1. I thought to myself, somebody needs to put that fire out before the whole building burns down. There was something contagious to that table, and I hope it didn't spread to this young girl, probably in her early 20s. She went around, put her stuff back at into the kitchen, and as she walked back out, the hostess says, a couple more for you. She goes to the door, meets another two people to sit down, and immediately says, "Hi, welcome to IHOP. Is there just two of you tonight?" And in the most pleasant and smiling voice, sat them at their booth and went about her business. Never letting what happened a few minutes ago affect how she dealt with these people. I thought, well, maybe it didn't get to her. Maybe it didn't bother her that much, like it's sitting there bothering me watching this. But you ever been around someone that's sick and they say, "Oh, I'm coming down with a cold." I'm like, "Well, stay away from me. I'm glad I don't have it. All I have is this kind of tickle in my throat." I'm glad I don't have that. All I have is a bit of a headache. I'm glad I'm not catching that. I'm going to talk myself out of getting sick. But I do feel a little bit achy. I got it. You passed it on to me. And I thought for sure, like an illness, it had been passed on to this young girl. So I decided I was going to do something. I walked over to her. She was sitting in a booth, cleaning up another table. She looked up at me and I said, "What's your name?" She said, "Alicia." I said, "You know, I happened to be watching when that couple gave you $1 tip." I said, "How'd that make you feel?" She said, "I just tried to put it behind me and move ahead." I said, "You know, what they wouldn't say to your face, they were happy to scream with a $1 tip that says, 'I didn't forget the tip. This is what you're worth.'" I said, "Don't let them change your attitude. Don't let them tell you that's all you're worth." And I gave her a tip which I felt was double of what they were going to give anyways. Because I did not want her to catch that bug. I didn't want her to catch that disease called discouragement. And it is a disease. The Bible even says so. In Proverbs chapter 13, verse 12, it says, "Hope deferred maketh the heart sick, but when the desire cometh, it is a tree of life." She had hoped for a pleasant outcome from going to work. I'm going to make a little money, pay my bills, save for a car, whatever it was she was doing. But instead, something made her heart sick. It's a sickness because it gets into us and it changes us in a very detrimental way. That's what discouragement does to us. It changes us. You know, it multiplies inside us. In school, anybody take biology? You know, they teach you about germs and cultures, and they say if there's one germ in this little dish, you come back in 20 minutes, now there's 2. Come back in 20 minutes, now there's 4 and 8. And your body says, "I don't see anything wrong with that," until they get into the thousands, and lo and behold, you're impacted by it. Discouragement does that to us. It alters our goals. It changes our expectations, changes our dreams, and gives us a feeling of futility. The God who made us, I think, knows that we have this problem with discouragement. In Exodus chapter 13, shortly after coming out of Egypt, God chose to lead Israel in a different direction. Exodus chapter 13, verse 17, it says, "It came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, and God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and return back to Egypt. I'd rather take them the long way than have them go through the rough experience and turn back. It's like we have to take a trip to Colorado Springs, but we're going to go out to Lyman, down through Pumpkin Center, down to Ordway, into Pueblo, and back up north through Fountain into Colorado Springs, because it's a rough ride through Castle Rock. And we don't want to do that. We could handle the long ride better than we could handle the discouragement of that rough, shorter ride. Discouragement makes us believe that what has happened to us will always happen to us. It will always be that way. Discouragement says that can't be changed. That's our outcome, and it can come from anywhere around us. It can come from school friends. It can come from classes. Have you made every sporting team you tried out for? Did you pass every test you wanted to take? Did the girl or boy you asked out say yes? Did you have difficulties in your marriage and you don't want anyone to know about it? I applied. The job I have now with the Denver Fire Department, I applied for it twice to do the exact same thing with the police department. I got the same form letter back twice. Thank you for applying. We have more qualified candidates. A couple years later, I applied for the job. I swear I got the same form letter back. The only thing different on was the date. I'm like, wow. I was so discouraged. Discouragement can come from anywhere. It can come all around us, and it has a detrimental effect on us. Even in our family. You kids ever bring a report card home? Math, got an A. Science, A. Gym, A. Social studies, A. Home ec, A. English, D-. What does mom and dad say? What's this D minus? And all the good things get overlooked and we are discouraged because it can come even in our own family. The thing is, discouragement doesn't change who we are, really. It changes who we think we are. It changes our opinion of ourselves. Sometimes it even gets us to the point where we're comfortable with that discouragement. I can put up with this discouragement, the pain that I'm going through now, because it's better than what might happen if I continue to try and fail. In fact, I'll start to feel uncomfortable if things start going a little better than I thought they had been, because we get so used to it. It says, I'm not good enough. Why try? The same thing always happens to me. It will never change. I was thinking as I was putting this lesson together, who are some people that face discouragement in the Bible? And just luck, I'm working my way through 1 Kings, and I stumbled on Elijah, one of the heroes, one of the pillars of the Old Testament. In 1 Kings chapter 19, Elijah is no doubt discouraged. 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 4 says, he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a juniper tree, and requested for himself that he might die, and said, it is enough now, O Lord, take away my life. I'm no better than my fathers, and it's not going to get any better. If we know the story, the Lord told him to appear on a mountain, and a mighty rushing wind went by, but the Lord was not in that wind. An earthquake passed by and broke the rocks apart, but the Lord was not in that earthquake. A fire raged right in front of him, but the Lord was not in that fire. Then there was that still small voice. The Lord said, Elijah, what are you doing here? Why are you here? I'm discouraged. I'm discouraged. And yet God gave him some news that there were still 7,000 people that have not bowed their knee to Baal. In a nation which we could maybe estimate a population of close to 1 million at least, 7,000? Not too many, but they're there. Maybe they're there because of Elijah, and he's missing that and feeling discouraged. He thought he was the only faithful one. Discouragement will continue to grow and fester inside of us, even though it's not who we really are, until we get rid of it, until it can be put away with. Do you know how your immunity system develops? When you're a child, when you're a baby in the mother's womb, you don't have much of an immune system. Your body is in, and your immune system is in learning mode, right? It says, this is the safe place for me to be. I'm going to start learning that lung is me. That's okay. This is a safe place. Me, lung, kidney, that's me. Muscles, that's me. Bones, different type of tissue, but that's me. That's all me. And once that child is born, your white blood cells, your immunity says, I'm on the lookout for anything that is not me. Well, something's in us now called discouragement. And just like white blood cells will fight to get rid of anything that is not you, discouragement needs to be eradicated because it is not you. We only think it is us. I'll give you an example how discouragement can hold us back. I think I've used this in lessons in the past. When I was growing up, we had a dog, and he was a good dog, good old black lab, and at night he had a dog house, and we didn't have a fenced yard, so he was on a leash. And I'd go out there in the morning, and I'd take the leash off, and he'd run around the yard, freedom, freedom, I'm free at last. Every once in a while, I'd walk out there real slow, and I'd start petting him, and I'd take the leash off, and I'd set it down very gently, and I'd keep petting him, and I would just walk gently, step away, and he'd like, aren't you going to let me go? He didn't even realize he was free. But as soon as I called his name, said, come here, I'm free. He felt he was still restrained. He felt he was still held back by that leash that discouraged him from trying to run in the first place. If we can remove discouragement, our future opens up to us. Give me another example. You ever hear about people facing difficult terminal diseases? They've tried everything. They've spent their money, they spent their time, and they're told there's no hope. And then they get a call from a pharmaceutical company. or their doctor says, there's a new study going on, there's a new medicine we'd like you to try. Are you willing to give it a try? Yes, I have no hope. Why not? And so you become part of this test, you take the pill, after a few days, you start feeling better. In fact, soon, after a few months, things are turning around. 3 months later, you get a letter, thank you for participating in our study. You were in the control group. You had the sugar pill. You had the placebo. You had your discouragement removed, and hope was allowed to flourish. It's amazing how it holds us back. How do we stop? How do we repair? How do we prevent discouragement? The first thing is, to stop discouragement from happening, you have to care. You have to care about others. It has to be an active concern that you have about other people. Enough to say, I will even look at myself. As I sat there in that restaurant, looking at this scowl on this old woman's face, I kept thinking, have I ever been given poor service at a restaurant? Did I think, I'm in the driver's seat, I'm the customer, you didn't step up to the standard I thought you should achieve? Did I ever do that to somebody? Once I saw it acted out, I thought, I don't ever want to do that to anybody. We have to be willing to look at ourselves, and I have to admit, I had some repentance to do. Not that I intended to put that discouragement, that despair on somebody, but I saw how I could. You have to care enough about other people to even look at yourself, make some changes in your own life, in your own world. Secondly, you have to be willing to act. It's intentional, it's necessary, it's constant. Like vitamins that you take to keep your body healthy, encouragement has to displace discouragement each and every day. Kindness puts away the harsh words. We need to be looking for an opportunity, forward thinking on who am I going to drive discouragement away from today. It cannot be passive. We cannot just be looking and say, I want to make sure I don't offend. That's borderline discouragement. That's almost not even interacting. We have to be active and encourage one another. Our hearts, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, are like a garden that needs watering each and every day. Like a tire with a slow leak. I don't have to be careful I don't run over another nail, but I got to keep putting air into it or it's going to go flat. We have to find ways to continue to remove discouragement in those we care about and in those around us that we're just becoming acquainted with. You know, I heard it in a study about people encouraging marriages to work better together. They said, you cannot criticize your spouse, even if they've done something wrong, made a mistake. You cannot bring anything to their attention unless you've already given them at least 5 compliments. And if you make the mistake of giving the negative thing first, the payback is 50 compliments to undo those harsh words. Because if you don't lay the groundwork, it becomes too harsh and takes a whole lot more work to undo. I found a pattern that Paul used, that he put into place of care and action just like that. In Acts chapter 15, verse 36, Paul says, and some days after, Paul and Barnabas said, let us go again and visit our brethren in every city where we have preached the word of the Lord and see how they do. And they went through Syria and Cilicia, confirming the churches. It was already on Paul's mind, even though he was not there to visit. I'm going to go where I've already been, and I want to visit them and see how they're doing. Not so I could be a spectator and say, they're doing great, they're barely treading water, they're not doing good at all. I'm going to go there and I'm going to, it says, confirm them. I want to go with them. I care, so I'm going to go and I'm going to confirm them. Confirm, the word literally means to reestablish, to build up, to strengthen further. That's what he had in his mind to do. 1 Corinthians, as was read for us, 1 Corinthians 14, verses 1 through 5, when he went and he wrote letters to them and visited them. He taught them there's something that's very important that you must be doing. I know tongues is an impressive thing. We see it on televangelists today, people speaking in tongues, usually followed by an address to send money here on the screen. But it seemed like it would be an impressive thing to speak in tongues, and yet Paul says, greater is he who edifies, who drives away that discouragement, who builds up, who encourages and motivates. Greater is that person than somebody who is speaking in tongues. In Romans chapter 14, Paul says, take it a step further. I encourage you to follow after things that edify and make peace in the church. I want you to follow after these things. To follow means to pursue them. When you find out what builds each other up, what helps us in our daily walk with God, in our daily assessment of ourselves, I want you to follow those things and put them into action. And then it comes together like this. In Ephesians chapter 4, in verse 16, it says, from whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplieth, according to the effectual working in every measure of every part, maketh increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. I can still remember to this day when I learned how to ride a bike. My dad was walking along with me, and he's making sure I don't fall. When I go to one side, he'd pick me up and catch me. And finally, he's barely holding on. And finally, he's let go, and I don't even know it. And I'm pedaling along, and I look back. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. My dad says, you got it. Paul says, I want to go visit these churches. I want to confirm them, encourage them to build each other up, pursue the things that build each other up, and follow those. And he steps back. Now they're edifying each other. You've got it. Pretty soon they had caring cards on Monday. Pretty soon they had potlucks on Sunday night. Pretty soon they had fellowship. Pretty soon they had SYD. They were doing the things. He no longer had to be present. The growth had taken place. The pattern involves two things, care and action. Others have to be in our hearts, and they have to weigh on our hearts and cause us to move, to do something. I've heard the expression, the gates of heaven are closed to those who would enter alone. It's not scripture, but I think we know the principle. We're on this earth to encourage and build up one another and gather souls so that the cause of Christ is of greater gain. Continuous vaccination against discouragement is required and needs to be practiced. I got to tell you about the rest of the restaurant story. The one time I ate out, it didn't end there. Actions are powerful. I'm sitting there after I'd already talked to the gal, and I gave her tip, and she was very grateful. Her whole attitude changed. Her whole outlook seemed to have changed. I went back to my seat, and I'm sitting there. A couple booths away from me was a young couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, looked like could have even been, high school age. Nice couple. Looked like he could have been on a football team, or maybe they just got married. Early 20s at best. And there was a different waitress that was serving my table and this one. She brought them their bill, they paid it, and I saw them get up and walk away like they're going to leave. And young man, walks back, and he starts moving stuff around on the table, but I can't see what he's doing. And I'm thinking, are you pulling a prank on this other waitress? I've seen people stack things up to where you touch one and the whole mess falls down. And the girl's kind of watching him, kind of chuckling. I'm like, that's a cruel joke if that's what you're doing. He's serious. He's organizing whatever he's doing, and they walk out, and I'm thinking, I got to go see what they did. I just poked my head over, and he had stacked every dish and every plate to where that waitress, all she had to do was come and grab it, and it was done. And I thought, there is hope. There are people who do care. I was so encouraged that young people still demonstrated that today. It was very motivating to me. You and I are called to be lights in the world around us. What the light does is it calls other people, gets their attention first, so that the gospel can follow. It doesn't save, the gospel saves. Our encouragement leads them, makes the soil fertile. You know, Jesus gave a parable about some soils where the sower cast his seed. Only one brought forth some 30, some 60, some 100-fold. But you know, the seed actually grew in two other soils. As I was driving around on my trip, I know some fields had been so rocky, the rocks were gathered and turned into fences to divide up the fields. What if we removed what choked the word in that one soil? What if we removed the cares that overwhelm the other soil? We'd have 3 soils producing 30, 60, 100-fold. What about that 4th soil, the wayside that was compacted? Another thing on my wonderful trip, I went down through Boise City, Oklahoma. And there's a place on the road there as you're traveling on what looks like nowhere. You can still see the ruts of the old Santa Fe Trail. They've been protected as a reminder of the history of this country and those that traveled a desolate land to get where they thought they had a better future. The ruts are still there. But you know, if a farmer took his disc through there, broke all that stuff up, it would grow again. What if the wayside soil had been loosened up and it became the 4th soil to receive the word? Now we are talking about salvation. We are talking about saving souls. Encouragement does not save, but it lays the groundwork for the gospel to be received so that it can be saved. This morning, I want to encourage you to be an encourager to others, to open our eyes, to open our thoughts to the concerns, the cares, the weights that's on everyone else around us, that they don't faint and grow weary in well-doing. I want you to think about someone in this congregation, someone you may encounter at the grocery store or at work, whose garden needs watering, whose tire needs a little bit of air before it goes flat, because the gospel needs to follow next. We all need that salvation. If there's any need that you have this morning, if you have not become part of the church, or if you're in need of any encouragement, if there's something you'd like to discuss with us, to pray with you, to speak with our elders, if there's anything you need at all, anything encumbering you, we're going to sing the song of invitation right now. Please come forward. Let that be known that we might encourage you as well.